Story 1. Room 1306 and the Mirror's Message. Business trips had become routine for Laura, so when she checked into a reputable hotel in New York City, she wasn't expecting anything unusual. After an exhausting day, she returned to her room on the 13th floor, desperate for a hot shower and a good night's rest. But as she closed the bathroom door, she noticed an unusual mist on the mirror. The air was cool, the room silent, yet the mirror was fogged. Assuming it was from an air conditioning malfunction, she grabbed a towel and wiped the surface clean. As her hand moved, her heart froze. Scrawled in the condensation was a chilling message: "I'm watching you." Laura's blood ran cold. She backed out of the bathroom, her eyes glued to the mirror as though it might write another message on its own. Thinking it was a prank, she tried to rationalize. Maybe a staff member had written it as a joke before she checked in. But who would risk their job to terrify a guest? Calling the front desk, she recounted the bizarre message, but the receptionist was dismissive, claiming that no one else had entered her room. The hotel hadn't seen any issues with guests feeling watched. Unnerved but exhausted, Laura resolved to sleep and leave early in the morning. But the night would not be so kind. At around 2 a.m., she was awakened by a soft tapping sound. It came from the bathroom. Her heart hammered as she lay still, listening as the taps grew louder, almost insistent. She turned on the bedside light, her gaze fixed on the bathroom door. Summoning her courage, Laura crept toward the door and flung it open, only to find the bathroom empty. Yet, when she looked at the mirror, there was a fresh message written in the fog: "See you soon." Her instinct to flee was overwhelming, but she remained rooted to the spot, overcome with dread. The following morning she left, determined never to stay in that hotel again. When she later looked up reviews for room 1306, she discovered that previous guests had reported similar experiences: strange messages on the mirror, unexplained sounds, and the feeling of being watched. To this day, Laura wonders if it was merely a prank, or if someone or something had truly been watching her. Story 2. The Vanished Roommate in Room 14. Mark had been excited to take a weekend retreat alone in the mountains, looking forward to peace and solitude. The remote hotel was quaint, its charm enhanced by a lingering rustic feel. As he checked in, the receptionist gave him a strange look, handing him the key to room 14. Her expression was unreadable, a hint of unease masked by politeness. Mark thought nothing of it, merely brushing it off as a long workday for her. Room 14 was at the end of a dimly lit hall, slightly more isolated than the others. When Mark settled in, he noticed it felt colder than expected. The heater was on, but the room was still icy. Just after midnight, he was jolted awake by loud, persistent knocking on his door. Assuming it was an error or a late-night prank, he stayed in bed. But the knocking continued, followed by soft, urgent whispers. The voices seemed to echo through the empty hall, intensifying his fear. He called out, but no one answered. The next morning, still rattled, he went down to check out and mentioned the incident. The receptionist gave him an odd look, saying, "Sir, room 14 hasn't been booked in weeks." Confused, Mark showed her his key card, but she simply shook her head, explaining that room 14 had been closed off due to renovations. The very fact that he'd slept there seemed impossible. Mark insisted on seeing the room, determined to make sense of the situation. But when the staff led him down the hall and unlocked the door, he saw a dark, abandoned room covered in dust, as though untouched for years. Terrified, he left, haunted by the realization that he'd spent the night in a place that wasn't meant to exist. Story 3. The Murderous Maid's Return. In a small, unassuming southern town, a family arrived at a hotel late one evening, too tired to notice much. A young maid, her smile slightly too wide and unblinking, escorted them to their room. She insisted on helping them settle in, her hands oddly fidgety as she pointed to various amenities. Her presence was unnerving, but the family was too weary to complain. Throughout the night, strange noises echoed through their room. A faint scratching sound against the door, followed by low whispers that seemed to come from the walls. The mother, growing increasingly uneasy, urged her husband to investigate, but each time he opened the door, he found an empty hallway. Hours passed with no relief from the sounds. At one point, the closet door creaked open, and a chill swept through the room. The following morning, while checking out, they casually mentioned the noises. The clerk's face paled as he looked at the room number. Quietly, he explained that a former maid had been arrested there years prior for the brutal murder of several guests. Disturbed, the family fled the hotel, hoping to put the night behind them. But for years afterward, they would remember that night, the maid's unnerving smile and the chilling scratches that haunted their room, wondering if she had ever really left.